guys, how you doing out there? It's another edition of Outside the Square Circle. It's here with me, your guy, Dennis Ragland, your boy, Frank Nez. We here to give you another great edition of boxing and what's going on out there. We have a lot of action out there, so we got to cover it with you guys. But before we get started, I got to shout out two great boxing sites, Boxing Newsflash and Boxing Videos Only Full Fights. If you're looking for great videos and great commentary about fighting, check them out on Facebook. These are two great sites to look forward to. Boxing Videos, they have the best videos on Facebook I have seen. They're really great. So check them out. We'll have their link in the description below. So give them a like, guys. Now, as I'm saying, you ready to dive into this, Mr. Nares?
Man, a lot to talk about, bro.
I can see the excitement in your face. So, hey, if you're ready, you can lead it off, boss. Let's go. Take us off.
Yes, sir. So to start it off, man, first fight last night that was televised was Andy Lee and Peter Quillin. Now, going into the fight, everyone knew Lee's last few fights of him coming back, getting knockouts later in fights that he was losing, so we knew he had power. And coming in, a lot of people have a dislike for Quillin because a lot of things he says throughout the media about how, you know, he's too big to fight certain fighters, even though some people feel he hasn't fought great competition to date. So going in, there was a decent storyline. So getting into the fight, first of all, Andy Lee has a heart of a lion, man. He just kept coming. After that first round knockdown, I mean, he was on noodle legs. I thought it could have been over and really fast. It was looking bad for him early. But a lot of the things that I saw, man, is Quillin, he doesn't do a good job of really solidifying rounds. There were rounds outside of the rounds that he knocked Andy Lee down early that were very close. And Quillin doesn't have a jab. It's non-existent. It was his fault getting to the decision. It was his fault that it was a draw. I mean, you're talking about there were so many swing rounds that weren't necessary. I thought Quillin looked a lot better than Lee, but the fact that he wasn't active at all in certain parts of the fight really came to bite him. Because to me, it was clear that he was the better fighter. It was clear that he was the more skilled fighter, but he just didn't solidify it. And I think the very second he steps up in the echelons of boxing, and he fights someone like Gennady Golovkin or Canelo Alvarez or Miguel Cotto, or even, and this is just my opinion, I think Danny Jacobs beats him. I mean, I don't see what he can do with those guys. He's not an active fighter. He doesn't throw enough. He doesn't make you miss enough. And he just fights. How do I put it? He fights the same way no matter what's going on in the fight, and that's not a good thing. There are times when he needs to be active. There are times if the first 2 minutes go by and neither fighter has done anything is when he needs to pick it up and steal that round. But he doesn't. He just fights the same way again. There are times where he had Andy Lee hurt and he didn't capitalize on it. He didn't do anything. You know what I mean? And it's like he needs to learn how to have different speeds to his game. He needs to have different layers to his game. Because he's going to continuously have close fights or draws or losses like this if he continues to do that. So I think in terms of what's next for him, man, I'd like to see him fight Danny Jacobs. I think that's a good fight. I think it's a test for both fighters, and we could see what they would do going forward. But he's not ready for Gennady Golovkin or Miguel Cotto, I don't think. I don't think he's ready for either of those two. So what's your take on the fights, man?
You made some very great points. What I got to say is really, I share your sentiments on so many things. First off, I got to say, Quillin, he needs to adopt, fine, or pay for a jab. I mean, because him having a jab, and that sets up so many other punches. You know, a lot of times it's like he was just either looking for that mega punch to stop Lee, or he was just trying to counter punch. He wasn't very active at setting up shots or keeping his hands busy to keep Lee at bay. You know, only thing that really kept Lee at bay was his respect for his power because he's been dropped already. Other than that, Lee he was relentlessly coming forward. And so that's something that I really think he needs to do on Quillin's side. Also, To what you were saying, Quillin, he doesn't shift gears fast. He doesn't have that second shift that he can go from here to here. You know, I mean, to flash back to a fight with Rosado. That's why Rosado was losing the fight, but then after Rosado was able to get Quillin's speed, he was able to get a good feel for him. He started to take over the fight as the end went because Quillin didn't switch gears from 1 to 2. You know, he just was the same fighter throughout.
Exactly.
And after a while, you're gonna a fighter that's smart with skill. They're gonna eventually figure you out. And they're gonna figure out how can I be more aggressive? How can I get in closer? How can I capitalize? And he needs to be able to shift his gears. He's just not well at that. He's good at what he does, and that's it. Also, on Lee's side, I really felt Lee. I thought Lee was outskilled, to be honest, but the fact that Lee was relentless and he also has power, he made that fight very interesting. That is a fight that I felt like it shouldn't have been as hard as it was for Quillin to pull out, and he just got a draw at that. So that shows you that Quillin has some major flaws. But Lee, he's the type of guy, no matter who he's going against, he's always going to give a great spirited fight. I love to watch him anytime. I see nothing but bright things in Lee's future. I would love to see him again against anybody at 160 because no matter win or lose, we're going to get a great fight and a great spirited and competitive effort from Lee. On Quillin's side, like I said, I would love to see him versus. I think him versus Danny Jacobs. That we've been wanting that for a while. I'm not sure why it hasn't happened, but I think that's the next move there for us to see because Quillin versus Cotto, even though Cotto is significantly smaller, I still give it to Cotto. Quillin versus GGG, I give it to GGG by manslaughter. So either way, I really think that, Danny Jacobs will be a good measuring stick to see what Quillin's at. Because fighting a guy that, is skilled as Danny and a guy that's going to work hard as Danny, they will let us know. They'll bring out the best in the both of them or the worst. So I would really like to see that fight next. As for Lee, throw him in there with anybody. Let me know the time and date, and I'm going to watch that. So that's pretty much my sentiments on that Lee versus Quillin fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat as you when it comes to Lee. I mean, he fights with so much heart and has so much power that he's in every fight, and he's going to make it entertaining. But one point before we move on that I actually want to touch on was Quillin's inability to make weight at both weigh-ins. And I was actually really, really disappointed with that. I actually forgot about that for a second, but let's touch on that. I was actually really disappointed, especially because you have a guy in Quillin who keeps talking about, no, I'm not going to fight Gennady Golovkin yet because I'm going to build my name so it can be that big money fight that Gennady Golovkin wants. Okay, cool. You have confidence in yourself that you're going to build yourself to that point, which no one believes, but that's fine. He has confidence in himself. But if you want that, if you truly want that, you need to show that you're dedicated to this sport. And he missed the weigh-in the day before on Friday, and then he missed weight again with the rehydration clause. Now the first weight, like Andy Lee said before the fight, he said, I kind of sympathize with him because that's the hardest part of boxing is actually making weight. And I understand that. So he missed it. I think it wound up being by like a half a pound. That's fine. But if you're going to do that, at the very least, uphold the rehydration clause and not go over that. That to me is just sheer laziness. And that really, really disappointed me. And I had no horse going into that. I'm not a fan of either. I don't necessarily dislike neither either. But when he missed weight both times, it actually really made me cheer for Lee that fight. I was really disappointed in Quillin.
You know what? I agree with you. To that thing, I really wanted to say, I don't know if it's because he laid off for so long. He had such a long layoff that maybe coming back he was just, like you said, he was a little bit lazy, or maybe it was just hard for him to get back into the groove of the hard work, how he used to work hard. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt of that, but mentioning it twice, I was just like, I don't know. Is he growing out the division? That's what I have to ask myself.
Right.
Is he turning into a 168-pounder? I'm not sure, but his next fight will definitely tell. If he has weight issues with his next bout at 160, then I think it's about that time he moves up. All right, guys, we're going to lead into the main event fight. I thought I thought this was gonna be an action-packed fight. I thought it was gonna be one of the best fights we ever seen at 140 in a long time. But to my surprise, I have to be honest, I was let down a little bit. I mean, Frank may feel a little bit different, but hey, I'm gonna talk about it. Let's get into it. Well, I thought it was a chess match more than I thought it was gonna be a toe-to-toe. Let's show who's the best in this division type of fight. Lamont Peterson put on the Islandi Laura-ish type fight. You know, he did it was a whole lot of movement, picking apart, picking his shots. He was very selective in the punches he threw, and he was able to scathe and not get hit with Danny Garcia's huge hook. That's everybody knows that's Danny Garcia's thing, and one of Danny Garcia's his strengths is he's very good at punching when you punch. He clips a lot of guys that way. And Lamont Peterson made sure, hey, I'm going to keep my distance. I'm going to time this guy. I'm going to be smooth. And I'm going to make sure that I don't get hit with those punches. I'm going to make sure when I throw a punch, I don't get countered and get wobbled, because then he has some power to him. He knew that coming in. He executed his game plan very well, except I felt like he was very reluctant. He didn't engage enough. Like I said with the Islandi Laura fight, like he did with Canelo Alvarez. A lot of people say that he beat him, he outskilled him, but the guy that was throwing the harder, bigger, more clear punches, just like Canelo was, Danny Garcia did that. I really felt like it was a similar type fight. It was a guy who was making a fight, and it was a guy who was being more skilled in the fight. That's the two contrasts that I seen in the fight. This is just my own opinion of it. Lamont Peterson boxed beautifully, but it was far and few that we seen very clear, very defining punches. Even though Danny's face showed you, Lamont put in work. His face showed the tail. But if you just look at the work rate, that's not typically how you dethrone the pound for pound guy at 140 or any weight. That's not how you dethrone him. You go in there and take it. Even if you put on a great skillful match, you have to go in there and show great skill with authority and aggressiveness. And I don't think we clearly seen that from Lamont Peterson. On Danny Garcia's side, some people may not like what I'm about to say. I think maybe Danny Garcia may need to switch trainers from his dad. I'm not saying by any means to kick his dad out of camp, don't have his dad around as a motivator, but I kind of seen some spots and areas that I feel like Danny's skill set is lacking. I don't know if that's directly to point at his father, maybe, or his technique, rather. I feel like maybe Danny can flourish, because he's about to, from what I understand, he's about to go to 147 and up there. Those are the big guys. Yeah. Those are the Mayweathers, the Pacquiaos, the Bradleys, the Thurmans, the Khan. Even though he beat Khan is a different fighter now. Everybody at 147 that's considered a top 10 fighter is capable of beating Danny Garcia.
Yep.
So with that being said, Danny cannot just rely on, hey, I can punch. I haven't lost yet. He can't just rely on that when he gets to 147. So I think he's going to need a little bit more skills. He's going to need to work harder on his technique. And I think maybe I don't know at this particular time the trainer that I would suggest for him, but I would suggest that he gets maybe he can look at some other trainer, even if somebody just to come not take over the whole fight. You know, maybe somebody that can work on him doing training camp, and maybe his dad can just run the corner. But he's going to need to benefit, from somebody helping him skill set wise. But Danny, I think, like I said, in the fight, Danny, he came in there with he wanted to fight, because you even see a couple of times where Danny was just like, come on, I want to fight. Then he wanted to fight. And Lamont Peterson wanted to box. And that's why I think maybe the judges was leaning more towards Danny, because they felt like he brought the fight. He brought the action. He was trying to actually hurt Lamont Peterson and make it clear that he's the champ, and Lamont just not so much. So what I think is next for them, like I said, with Lamont Peterson, I heard him say he wants to move up to 147 too. And I think that's great, because you know what? I want to touch on this. I'm sorry, I had to go back. This is going to be almost like the third time Lamont lost, and he still has his IBF title. Even Floyd Mayweather Jr. said before, he think it would only be right for Lamont Peterson to relinquish that and stop parading around like some champion, even though he's took L's with the belt. And I think after this time, I'm sorry, even if Lamont Peterson decides, okay, I want to fight 2 more fights at 140, he should not have that IBF strap to do it with. He shouldn't. The champ don't continue to lose and keep the belt. Even though if it's technicalities, your honor and integrity have to come in and say, nah, I'm going to go back to the drum board. So I think it's good for Peterson to move up so that way he can start over fresh in a new division without that IBF title that he's been holding on for so long. Same for Danny Garcia. And I think this opens up so many other things at 140 because now you got Crawford. He's already about to fight for a belt. You got Broner, who's deserving. I think he's earned a title fight at 147. You got Matisse, and I think even Matisse saying providing the cop fight, it should give Danny Garcia's WBA title. They should let them fight for it. I really believe that they should let Matisse and providing the cop fight for that WBA belt. And I believe Broner's next fight, he should be in line to fight for the IBF or the WBC belt his next fight. And so on and so forth. Some of the other guys at 140 should get a shot at the title because it makes things more interesting. So that's what I see next for both of those guys moving up and the benefit it can be if they do move up. What do you got, Frank?
You know what's funny is that anytime there's a fight like this, we are forever going to use the Erislandy Lara versus Canelo Alvarez fight as an example because it's the perfect example of what happened.
Here we are.
We're going to be known as that. People are going to look at outside the square circle like, oh, that's the Lara Canelo guys. Like but no, I mean, but that is the perfect example of it. And it goes back to the term we've kind of coined. I never heard anyone else use it before, but the punch to move ratio. There is a such thing. And as good as Peterson looked those first, I'd say 4 or 5 rounds. I gave a few to Danny in the middle rounds. But I'd say the first 3-4 rounds, Peterson was moving, but he wasn't throwing that much. And when he did throw it, it looked beautiful. I mean, you know what I mean? Let's not make it seem like he was only moving. He was throwing punches and he was landing. They weren't the most effective of punches, but they were landing. But there's a such thing in the judge's mind as a punch to move ratio. But you know what? Lamont Peterson showed great versatility, and I thought he should have started earlier walking down Danny Garcia because he had so much success doing that. I don't know. I mean, it was obvious that when he was boxing and moving, he was trying to frustrate Danny Garcia. He was doing that to get Danny off of his game. Then, when he switched and started walking him down, it was apparent that was in the game plan the whole time. So it was exciting to see him do that because, I mean, that's when Lamont's at his best. He doesn't really box and move that often. He's an inside fighter. I love seeing him fight on the inside. He's a great fighter. You know, when he started walking him down and started really catching Danny, man, he looked good. I just wish he would have turned it on earlier. Yeah, he looked great. I just wish he would have turned it on earlier because I personally thought Peterson won the fight. But I didn't think it wasn't a robbery because there was too many swing rounds. There was too many rounds in which Peterson didn't cement that round. I mean, in the same way that Quillin didn't do that with Andy Lee. He didn't cement him enough. He didn't leave his stamp on that round, even though he did look better in the round. So to certain judges, you know what I mean? When you leave it to judges, you can't do that. You need to absolutely win rounds and not make it close. But man, Peterson did a hell of a job, just like you mentioned, of taking away Danny Garcia's left hook. I didn't see one left hook land the whole fight to the head by Danny Garcia. I mean, Peterson looked really good. And to your point with Garcia needing a new trainer, that may be the case because there's two huge flaws in Danny Garcia's game. One is that he can't cut off a ring to save his life. He has no idea how to cut off a ring. I mean, we saw it with Herrera, and now
he just follows you.
He follows you, exactly. And the thing with that is this I mean, and it's kind of getting into a different argument, so I'll be short with this, but this is what I don't like. When there are fans and people who are like, oh, well, you know, Peterson ran. So-and-so ran. Okay, but it's the other fighter's job to cut that ring off and connect. It's that other fighter's job to trap him in the corner and start connecting punches. It's that other fighter's job to use body punches to slow down that person that's running. Do you get what I'm saying? There's always two sides of that coin.
How often do guys run away from GGG?
That's what I mean, but he cuts off the ring so well. I mean, that's a great example. He knows how to shift and knows how to move in, but like I said, that's a different argument. We might even be able to have a whole video on that someday. Moving on to the point, the second thing that Danny Garcia is terrible at is adjusting. And that's why I wanted to see Lamont Peterson start walking him down earlier, because after the first 3 or 4 rounds, when Danny Garcia got frustrated and he realized that Peterson was boxing and moving, he was done. He had one thing on his mind, and that was to keep moving forward and trying to throw hard punches. And then the very second Peterson started moving forward, Danny Garcia was flustered. He was done. He didn't know what to do. And to me, that shows an inability to adjust, an inability to adapt. And Garcia just, I mean, like I said, those are his 2 big flaws. So now going back to what you said with needing a new trainer, he may need that. But the thing I think he needs a little bit more than a new trainer is a strength and conditioning coach. Because this is not the first time we've seen him tail off at the end of fights. We saw that with Zab Judah as well. And we saw that with Herrera. I mean, towards the end of fights, he starts really, really tailing off. And that is why a lot of people thought Peterson won the fight as well, was because Peterson got stronger as the fight went on. I mean, you're talking about the championship rounds. Peterson beat the shit out of Garcia. Let's not mince words here. You know what I mean? Peterson and those were his rounds in those championship rounds. So I think those are the 2 things that Garcia really needs to work on. But I mean, at this stage in his career, can he really? It's almost like a he is who he is type of thing, unless he gets with a different trainer like you suggested. But you know what I was glad to hear from Danny Garcia? I was glad to hear at the end of the fight him mention 147, because he's been very reluctant to even bring up the fact that he can move up soon. So the fact that he has that on his mind makes me a little happier, because it's about that time for him to go up to 147 and fight the big dogs. I mean, just like you said, I don't think he beats anyone up there at this point. Maybe I'm living in the moment, but I felt this way for a few years now.
Right.
I mean, I just don't think he's ready for them. But at the same time, if he's not ready now, when is he going to be? He needs to move up. I think the most logical fight at this point in time is him versus Marcos Maidana. I mean, Maidana's been talking about the Garcia fight since he lost his second fight with Floyd Mayweather. Mm-hmm. So it's obvious that Maidana wants it. And it's obvious that Garcia is moving up to one. Yeah, it'd be a good one, and I think Maidana might get him out of there late, but that's a different story. As far as Peterson, just like you said, I hope he moves to 147 as well. I think you're a little more passionate about him hanging on to the belt, but I understand your point. I get it, and I agree. I'm just not as passionate about it. But yeah, I think hopefully he can move up. As far as an opponent, you know what? Even if he doesn't move up, I wouldn't be mad if he fought the winner of the Lucas Matthysse versus Provodnikov fight. Because after he lost to Lucas Matthysse, the one thing he said was that he really wished that he didn't fight with his heart. Because he heard about, Lucas Matthyse's power and so forth. So he wanted to really stand in front of him. So I'd like to actually see, this is assuming that Lucas Matthysse wins, which isn't a guarantee by any means. But I wouldn't mind a rematch of that, and I wouldn't mind if Provodnikov wins that he fights Peterson, but that's only if Peterson stays down. If he moves up, he has a lot of options. But and you know what's funny? Speaking of them moving up, is that and a few people mention it, and they're absolutely right, is that even though Danny Garcia won the fight and Lamont Peterson lost the fight, Danny Garcia's stock went down and Lamont Peterson's stock went up. As ironic as that is, because and it's not just because of this fight though, it's because of a multitude of things. We saw Garcia look bad against Herrera and should have lost the fight.
Lost against Herrera.
Right, exactly. And then we saw him fight Rod Salka, that was very controversial. No one wanted to see the fight. And now we see him against Lamont Peterson, and he looks bad again, just like he did against Herrera. So, I mean, you're talking about a string of 3 fights where 2 he looked bad in, and many people felt he should have lost, and 1 where he had no business taking the fight. So his stock is really going. I mean, you're talking about a dude who was supposed to be in line to fight Floyd Mayweather soon. I mean, that was the talk after he beat Lucas Matthysse. You know what I mean? And then the thing with Peterson is we've seen him in the past look bad against bigger fighters that he's fought. I mean, we saw him get knocked out against Lucas Matthysse. We've seen him fight to a draw against Victor Ortiz when he really started to take over the fight and things like that. So we've seen him in fights where, you know, he didn't look too great himself. So for him to come out and put a performance on like that, that really, really helped his stock. Because no one that I talked to before the fight thought Peterson was going to win. I know I didn't. I thought Garcia was going to get him out of there, to be honest with you. But Peterson did really well. So if he goes to 147, he has a lot of options. I wouldn't be mad at a Lamont Peterson versus Sean Porter fight. I think that would be a really good fight. But yeah, I mean that's all I have on that fight. Do you have any other thoughts on the fight, Dennis?
Paulie say he want to come back. I would love to see. I mean, because Paulie's not the biggest puncher. Lamont Peterson he's a technical boxer. I think it makes sense for somebody for Paulie to come back against somebody that's actually moving up to 147. Somebody for Lamont to fight against somebody that's not a huge puncher at 147. I would like to see Paulie versus Peterson. I wouldn't be mad at that fight for just the transition to see where it goes from there. Like I said, I couldn't see a better fight than you named for Danny Garcia than Maidana. Because he said I remember he said he wanted to give Danny Garcia a beatdown for his friend Matisse. So
yeah.
You nailed it right there. I would love to see. There would be two fights I would love to see for them guys right up there, right at the back. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. We really thank you. Please share this video. Like it. Leave a comment. We really enjoy reading your comments. You know, they help us get better. They give us a direction and an understanding of what you guys are thinking. What do you want to see next? Whatever it is in the comments. If it's funny, if you're critiquing us, hey, leave a comment, share it with your friends, like it, enjoy this video because, hey, we're here for you guys. This is why Outside the Square Circle continues to do podcasts. I'm Dennis Ragland. That's Mr. Frank Nez. Also, I want to say, please, guys, subscribe. That's another thing. Subscribe to us. We're going to continue to give you videos every week because so far we have a boxing fight coming up week after week into the big boxing fight, which reminds me, we're supposed to make our predictions tonight, but I'm glad we forgot because I haven't decided quite yet. So next week, you guys, I promise you, both of us will give you our predictions of who we think will win a big fight, and also let us know who you think will win too. You guys out there, have a great one.